Okay, my talk is
Recording
called.
in progress.
Okay, my talk is called "The Layers of Irony Model: How a Meta Meme Spread Across Academia and Subcultures." Here is the model. Some of you may have seen it before. It's pretty widespread on the internet. It's a model that I developed in 2015 in order to explain the different types of irony specific to memes. The way that the model works is essentially that there is a baseline level of irony assumed by the audience or the interpreter of a meme, and um, and the audience, based on the baseline that is assumed not about the meme itself or about the intent of the particular communicator, but about the overall general intended or expected audience that the creator of the meme has had in mind when releasing the meme, or perhaps when someone else was sharing the meme had in mind as the broader communicative context within which to interpret the meme. And this is necessary because there's a key distinction between ordinary communication and mimetic communication, and that is, in ordinary communication, you typically know who the speaker is, and you typically know who the speaker typically knows who the intended audience is. But in mimetic communication, if we can even really call it that, within the broader environment of memes spreading without so much control from the speaker or the audience, the communication happens sort of stochastically. And with memes, you don't know who the intended audience is, and the audience usually doesn't know who the speaker is, and therefore, instead of assuming the intent of the speaker, you have to have a vague idea, or a rough kind of rough agreement about the baseline of what is the default interpretation of a meme, and therefore, based on that, you then decide what exactly the meme is ironizing, if it has markers of irony such as deep frying or typos and other such things that tip off the audience that this is better off being interpreted as ironic. And so it's a very straightforward matter when the baseline is presumed to be pre-irony, because all you do is simply interpret the meaning in a sort of an inverted opposite way. But when a meme is being shared in a more developed mimetic subculture or an environment, the baseline tends to be that everything is by default being interpreted ironically by the members, and therefore, if there are hidden meanings within a meme, often by way of additional subtler references or meanings that only become apparent when you interpret it in a reflexive sort of way, you have to assume that irony is a baseline and therefore interpret it using either a post-ironic or meta-ironic framing within which there are now multiple layers of irony. And so this is what the model is explaining. And now it's become ubiquitous online. This is the search results that you'll get on Google for meta-irony, and this is the search results you get for post-irony. The model is the first result for either one of them when you look it up on Google in general, and this has become the sort of the orthodox model for interpreting irony and layers of irony in memes and on the internet in general. At least for the cultural analysts online, not necessarily academics, because they have more well-established, older, and complex models of irony. But on the internet, this has become the sort of orthodox view, at least in the Anglosphere. And here is a diagram that I made depicting the different eras of the ironic meme movement within the previous decade. And we will start with a quite long drawn historical context about how ironic memes developed in order to better understand the spread and the functioning of the model. Beginning with the early ironic and middle ironic era, so between 2013 to 2016. Here is a very early meme on Facebook from a page called Stick Memes. The ironic meme movement, as we know it, reached critical mass on Facebook, not on other platforms. Even though we're Twitter, Twitter's own endemic ironic meme culture existed and was well established even by 2013. Enough so that there were journalistic articles being written about the movement, and the quintessential weird Twitter poster, Drill or Wint, started posting in 2008. So it was actually a much more well established and older sort of movement within the broader meme movements in general. But the ironic meme movement only really took off on Facebook because that's where it reached critical mass. And the important difference between, say, weird Twitter or even the irony being utilized by anonymous users on websites such as 4chan and Facebook memes was that there was an inherent conflict between low literacy users and high literacy users of memes on Facebook, because low literacy users, popularly referred to as normies, were an integral component of the ironic meme movement on Facebook, because the ironic meme page admins and the users making and spreading the memes relied on the reach generated by the far more numerous low literacy users in order to reach their intended audience, who were people who would be more appreciative of ironic memes. And so, even though there were meme pages on Facebook at the time, they were pre-ironic meme pages posting things like fandom content, aesthetics, similar to basically the same as Tumblr aesthetics and Pinterest types of mood boarding, and of course general Facebook business pages. The ironic meme pages differentiated themselves by deliberately focusing on strange and silly themes such as sticks, but also history. So there was a small subcultural movement within the Facebook ironic meme pages called the historical alliteration meme pages, such as Jam and Japanese memes. And here you see that the caption is actually at the bottom instead of the top, even though it became standardized by the usage and ubiquity of Twitter screenshots becoming the primary meme format, with the text at the top captioning the image at the bottom. Early memes, and here's one by Edgy Egyptian Memes. Early ironic memes on Facebook had a much more freestyle kind of a format. Here you see the top text, bottom text format, but the font's not impact and the placement's skewed. And so for these meme pages, the baseline was pre-irony. They were parodying and subverting the expectations people had about meme pages by taking the formats of the pre-ironic meme pages and then subverting them by replacing the content with different kinds of foci, and making a point of acting as if the memes about ancient Egypt presented as a sort of a from the perspective of someone who really is literally an edgy Egyptian, as relatable to the audience, which of course would be impossible because ancient Egyptians don't exist anymore. But the entire a major aspect of the humor derived for these ironic meme pages was that they were acting as if the ironic memes about very, very obscure and niche topics were relatable to everyone. And also, the seeds of post-ironic memes were being planted at the same time by the same pages by the advent of educational memes. Here you see a meme from biological biology memes, tricking the viewer into thinking that they're just going to see some silly joke about getting smashed at a party or something, but actually it's educating them about corals. Here's another example from Kinky But Kosher Korean memes, educating the viewer about the Korean myths around what happens to people when they get eaten alive by tigers. Their soul gets enslaved by the tiger, and it cannot be freed until a relative hunts and kills the tiger and then eats its heart. And these historical alliteration meme pages became so successful and popular, and they took their memeing so seriously that they even developed an alternate reality game in which they used a live updated world map reflecting the number of likes that the meme pages had in order to play a sort of a risk variant game. And here's a very important blog post written by Freya Abbas at the time, chronicling the development of the game. She was a big fan and supporter of the Mayan meme pages and the Aztec meme pages. So, and this is actually, to my knowledge, this is the only record remaining of the meme war game that was played during 2015. Next, we'll move on to the middle ironic and late ironic eras, spanning from 2015 to 2017. Around the same time, actually, there was a different lineage of post-irony developing in the same environment, but not on Facebook meme pages, but in Facebook groups that were primarily focusing on memes. Here's an example. Here's an article explaining this development specifically within the left-leaning aesthetics-focused meme pages, exemplified by the very large and very popular Post Aesthetics, which was focused on vibe-based memeing. And this was a very early example of a mimetic subculture focusing primarily on vibes rather than on particular themes or content. And it was made possible by moderators kind of doing quality control on the sort of content being posted into the group based on the vibes, and people in the group began to develop a feeling and understanding for the vibes that informed the aesthetics of the mimetic content that they produced and shared in the group. And as an offshoot of this meme group, one very interesting splinter group developed called the Chicago Long March Reenactment Society, run by a colleague of mine and also a meme researcher, Ashley Lee. And this group was special in that it didn't post memes. It posted essays about memes and essays about meme groups and essays about meme cultures and essays about how to bring about the next stage of subcultures and countercultures. And this was initially these groups, these post-ironic theory groups about memes, developed as they all tended to develop as a joke. They were ironic. They were basically parodying academics, analyzing more substantive and weighty sort of cultural productions. But eventually, all of these groups that were doing it in a tongue-in-cheek sort of way began to take themselves seriously because they all realized that there was something really to be something interesting to be discovered by taking meme studies seriously. So they were very early pioneers of mimetic analyses in this way, and because they still retained that ironic posture and the aesthetics of irony, even though everything they posted were intended to be taken seriously and earnestly, they became post-ironic. And so although initially the baseline that they were assuming was pre-ironic, as in they were parodying and ironizing academics, and therefore they were doing a sort of an elaborate ironic memeing by posting these very lengthy, often just word replacement parodies of academic content to be about memes. Eventually, they drifted towards post-irony because they developed their original theories and content and posted things of real substance that were funny and interesting because they had the aesthetics and the markers of irony, even though their content was to be taken wholly unironically in order to be best appreciated. I also had headed a research group in the same exact kind of way, where initially I developed theories and analyses of memes as a sort of a joke because I thought it was very funny to take meme studies seriously, but very quickly I caught on to the fact that actually there's some important and interesting work to be done. And in fact, the model itself developed in this group, in this specific particular post here in the comments, and I began with just this this quadrant. There's the simple table here without any of the layers or the arrows pointing from pre-irony into meta and post-irony through irony. and then I played around with making the subversions, a sort of a making the subversions on a spectrum rather than a binary. But eventually, I realized that it makes much more sense within the theoretical framework to consider the subversions as a binary rather than a spectrum. And I also gave a talk about the model and the way that meme cultures and their development parallel art historical developments in other media. And this was actually the most recent state of the model when at the time when I gave the talk. And I also developed the historical projections because at the time this was 2015, and I hadn't really experienced most of the later ironic eras, even though I could see hints of it. So I was also developing the historical model at the time. And I think that it has been pretty spot on as far as the major currents have been concerned. And next, we'll consider the late ironic era in particular. During the late ironic era, a major aspect of the memes being developed at the time and posted and shared by the meme pages were memes about memes, especially ironic memes making fun of other ironic memes, and ironic memes making fun of the concept of irony, and deep frying and pasting more text on top of other text that were in an older meme, and making it very apparent that someone else's meme is being defaced through the act of ironizing became very popular. And at the same time, techniques for filtering audiences became widespread because not only was Facebook limiting reach for pages, whereas initially in the very early days of Facebook pages, all of the followers got to see the post a page made eventually in their feed, and not only that, they were exposed to posts that their friends on Facebook were interacting with, and so inadvertently were being converted into ironic meme page followers by being friends with people who followed the ironic meme pages. By 2017, Facebook had clamped down on the reach of the pages, and it became a major problem for the ironic meme pages that a lot of pre-ironic or low literacy users were following their page, and therefore they were not able to reach the intended audiences anymore because they were watered down by the low literacy users who didn't appreciate the memes, didn't interact with them, and therefore didn't boost reach for the memes being posted. And so here's an example from Special Meme Fresh, a very influential meme page which developed the meme man character seen in the meme here, wherein the meme page admin would simply block and ban people for tagging their friends on the posts made on the page because it was deemed a low literacy user behavior, and also additionally bringing in other low literacy users. At the same time, post-ironic memes had become more and more elaborate. Here's one I made in 2017. There's 10 citations from Dewey and Peirce and James just in the little text box over there. I don't know if you can tell by now, I'm a pragmatist. And this meme was making fun of continentals and analytics because basically all the other meme pages within the by now well-established philosophy meme community were either continentals or analytics. And so by 2017, meta-irony and post-irony as techniques had become well established. And by the 2017 to 2019 or meta-ironic era, the baseline was solidly, at least within the ironic meme communities, solidly defined as irony rather than pre-irony. And so everybody viewing any given meme assumed that everybody within the audience were going to, by default, at least be interpreting a given meme as ironic. And if there was anything interesting being done by a meme, it must be doing something post-ironic or meta-ironic. And because the sort of the appeal and novelty of ironic memes simply making fun of existing memes by replacing the conventional contents of the meme with something unusual had run out, more and more people were inclined to default to an post-ironic or meta-ironic interpretation of a meme because that was the interpretation more likely to produce anything of substance or interest. At the same time, a long enduring anxiety developed within the ironic meme communities, namely the loss of meaning. And this is a very postmodern sort of an anxiety, or rather an anxiety particular to receptions of postmodernism as a concept or movement. And I had posited around the time that post-irony is a way out of this anxiety-inducing situation of the loss of meaning within memes, as resulting from the endless layering of irony that destroys any semblance of meaning other than the existence of irony and parodying itself. And here in a diagram that that my colleague Maria Zarova produced for an article that we co-wrote on this topic, there is Nietzsche representing the post-ironist and Lacan representing the meta-ironist, engaged in a mutually assured destruction by way of endless layering of irony. And here's another diagram that I created, actually for the earlier aforementioned talk that I gave at Humboldt University, wherein I analogize the different modern isms with different kinds of ironic memeing. And around the same time, also, this diagram and the theory embedded within it began to spread to other websites, Quora, Reddit, and other much more obscure forums, but also to image boards like 4chan and Dvach. In particular, and it was very interesting that the diagram was being used most commonly on these anonymous platforms as a reaction image, sort of signaling to the other users that I am more memetically literate than you, or perhaps to provoke a reaction from other posters, or to sort of demand whether someone is being ironic or not, and so on. And this is a very exemplary exemplary thread on the literature board on 4chan, wherein users are discussing everything from whether 4chan is an exemplar of the victory or triumph of postmodernism, whether we can undo postmodernism and its perceived excesses, and the users around the model are having very serious and earnest discussions about everything from the significance of Chan culture to whether this is good for you or not, whether being ironic is destructive to society, and actually they're having very in-depth discussions of great substance, and this is not people sort of joking around or making fun of each other for being interested in the topic in the first place, like in the earlier example of people simply using the model and the diagram as a reaction image. And here's someone who's confessing that they're only ever sincere online because on 4chan everyone assumes everyone else is a troll, and therefore when he or she post on 4chan in a completely sincere way, it's the ultimate troll, to troll the trolls who expect you to be trolling, but actually you're being sincere, and it's going against their expectations. And here's another user asking, can't postmodernism be defeated by just being earnest? And this is a sort of a actually approaching the new sincerity movement's same solution. And another user responds by saying that, but the global forces of capital will never permit this. And this isn't a sort of an anti-Semitic dog whistle or anything like that. This is actually, this user is simply earnestly suggesting that it's against the economic order of contemporary society for us to be earnest and sincere. And so the model seems to have provoked a very earnest and sincere discussion, even in an environment such as 4chan. where the baseline, as one of the users mentioned, is ironic, is trolling, that is the baseline assumption. And therefore, by engaging earnestly in this environment, these users are engaging in a post-ironic mode of communication. Even though the very platform itself signals to the users irony, the fact that it's much better and much more lucrative and much more enriching for the users or the audience to interpret it in an unironic way makes post-irony the best mode of interpretation for these users, and so that's why they engaged in it. Around the same time, also, a lot of articles online began to be written about layers of irony using the model. A lot of Medium articles, which none of which reference the original source. They actually often cite one another as the sources. And a lot of them tended to be about analyzing contemporary humor or marketing or how to make a viral meme. But this one in particular delves a little bit deeper into philosophy. Here, the author goes into things like Wittgenstein's philosophical investigations, another Norwegian philosopher, Toril Moy, and so it seems to me that unless the authors of these articles are writing in a tongue-in-cheek, ironic sort of way, they're simply being pre-ironic. But of course, these are articles; these are not memes, and so it's not entirely within the purview of this model, but at the same time, I think that it makes perfect sense to understand any sort of online content as an internet meme, because the links and the articles, as we've seen from even the earliest sort of examples of this marketing strategy, such as BuzzFeed, they really did treat the articles as though they were memes. And on platforms like Facebook or Twitter, or even on even through link sharing from email link shares, the articles really were the best spreading articles. Really did spread just like memes, and so I think that it might make sense to also interpret these articles written in this way, or spreading at least in this way, along the model. And so finally, we enter into the post-ironic era, and in 2020, a major satirist YouTuber called JRig, Greg Guevara, produced a video analyzing post-irony, meta-irony, and layers of irony in this video. And he produced a series of videos along this line of thought, wherein he adds to the model that are produced by focusing more on the phenomenology of irony rather than the content, mimetic content, and the spread of memes that I was focusing on. So I focus primarily on the evolutionary and spread and contagion and cultural evolutionary aspects of memes, and the way that mimetic content is interpreted as content, and rather than the experience of the individual audience members or the individual communicator. Whereas for JRig, the focus has shifted to the phenomenology, or the experience of what being ironic feels like, and what being ironic does to you and does to the other interlocutor, and how this changes the mode of communication between two people. And so that's his original contribution to the theory. His focus on the phenomenology of irony. And this his initial video was very popular. It was very successful. There's 750,000 views so far, and other YouTubers began to build on top of his model. Here you see another very large, very popular YouTuber, Olivia Sun. She made a video using building on top of JRig's model and using my framework as well to interpret what makes Gen Z humor interesting. And this video has been very influential among other YouTubers and other people in general on the internet analyzing Gen Z humor. And here's Sky Payne, a professor of French literature, analyzing JRig and his satirical practice on YouTube, using JRig's own video on irony to then further analyze JRig. 2 years after JRig's video hit YouTube and became very popular, a secondary source of popularization of the model emerged on YouTube. iDubbbz, a very, very popular and influential YouTuber. He has almost 7.5 million subscribers. He fairly recently decided to turn to making more serious films and documentaries, from moving from his initially lighthearted and humorous content. And he decided to make his documentary about Sam Hyde, a very controversial comedian who specializes in creating ironic comedy sketches that are that would be very offensive if interpreted at face value. And there was big drama around this documentary because both parties independently developed their own documentary about the encounter when iDubbbz visited Sam Hyde to interview him for his documentary, and Sam Hyde released his documentary before iDubbbz, creating a big drama about whether iDubbbz is ever going to release his video or not. And so it further boosted the reach of both of their videos because of the surrounding drama. And eventually, when the video was released by iDubbbz, there was a segment within the documentary explaining the concepts of irony, meta-irony, and post-irony. And as you can see on the screen here on the projector, he uses a cyclical model rather than the quadrant model. And so it's a variant of the model. And the reason that, I'll get to the reason that I say it's a variant shortly. So here's JRig reacting to the iDubbbz documentary, essentially going into detail about how iDubbbz model varies from his own, and giving his thoughts on the way that iDubbbz made changes or made his own original contributions to the model, and how he interprets the different layers of irony. And this further contributed to the popularization of irony within what JRig refers to as the irony sphere on YouTube, which is a sizable community of fans who are obsessed with the concepts of irony, post-irony, and meta-irony. And so this model, soon after its popularization on other platforms, began to give rise to variants made by other people, particularly JRig fans, after it was initially popularized on YouTube that way. In particular, take a look at this post made on the JRig subreddit 1 year before the iDubbbz documentary was released, submitted by Timmy127_SMM. I think the similarity sort of speaks for itself, and I think if it's my hunch, of course, I haven't spoken to iDubbbz directly, but it's my hunch that iDubbbz would have at least watched JRig's video, because presumably iDubbbz did quite a thorough bit of research on irony by looking up things like irony, post-irony, meta-irony on YouTube, and if not Google or Google Images. And perhaps he put his own spin on the model and came up with his own, in which instead of meta-irony leading into sincerity from post-irony, the order is mixed up, and meta-irony layers on top of sincerity. And I think that my model is more suited towards analyzing memes as evolving, spreading, and kind of a widespread cultural phenomena, whereas perhaps the cyclical models developed by iDubbbz and the JRig fan might be better suited towards the expressing the individual person's progress towards interpreting the same piece of content based on different pieces of information or attitudes. And also around the same time, finally, around the same time, finally, academic articles and academics began citing the model in their research. Here's one by Carrara 2017, and here's another one by Markovsky 2022. And in the same article, JRig is also cited. And while I think it's pretty clear that these articles are to be interpreted in a pre-ironic way. There's even though it's widely acknowledged by most meme researchers that the topic of study that we're engaged in is something something funny if you think about the fact that we're researching memes. We also at the same time take it seriously, but it's not to say that we take it ironically. And of course, until we reach a point wherein academic research really does begin to spread like memes, perhaps this model is completely inadequate for analyzing the ironicity of academic research.
Hi, academics at the University of Bucharest. I hope you're having a good time learning about irony and memes. I told Olasunvia and iDubbbz to also send a video, but they didn't get back to me. So it's just me.
Right. Thank you, JReg. And finally, we also have a meme studies forum at forum.memestudies.org where academics and subculturalists alike come together and analyze memes and memetic history and everything relevant to our research interests, such as the talk that I've just given you. Feel free to join any of our communities through the links that I've displayed on the screen above, and now ask me any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We actually have questions from the room. I'm going to invite Damien to ask you a question.
Hello. So first of all, I want to say that thank you for this presentation. I am a huge fan of the Facebook page Philosophers Meme. It actually kind of got me into philosophy to begin with back in 2015. Yes, it's insane. I think that if I have a question for you is about how do you think some memes, if some memes can be kind of included in this specific diagram about layers of irony? Like take, for example, Gondola, that I personally have an affinity for. You think that you require some that Gondola would require some previous context to understand it as a post-ironic meme? Do you think that the fact that some of us know that Gondola is derived from Spurdo Sparde, which is actually derived from a poor drawing of Pedo Bear, is mandatory to understand the very specific meaning of Gondola?
I don't think it's mandatory to understand the etymology of any words for us to interpret the words correctly. And in the same way, I don't think that it's mandatory for any of us to know the origins of gondola in the etymological sense, or I suppose the evolutionary historical sense, to understand or interpret it correctly as a post-ironic meme. I think the analogy made by classical memeticists between memes and genes is quite apt here, in the sense that genes become expressed through the complex interaction between the genetic material, namely DNA, and the environment, which includes everything from the somatic cells of the organism itself to the rest of the ecosystem. And I don't think that the historical information which is embedded within the DNA is necessary for the genetic expression to occur in a healthy way. So I think that's a good analogy to use for whether we need historical information to interpret memes.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question from the room, and there's also one in the chat. I think since the one in the chat was asked, we can go ahead and you can answer that one, and then we're gonna have the person in the room ask you the other question. If you can confirm seeing the question in the chat as well.
Yep. This question is by from Carolyn Gore. You mentioned about academics, irony, and memetics, so I'd like to chase on that. The CCRU at Warwick and the controversial Lick Land use a lot of memeticness in their writing, and Land even did the famous frog-croaking ironic talk. From it was a medium to access the noumena. Would you still count this in the same type of irony and memetic use in the post-irony state? That's a really cool question. I really like it. Yes, I think that particularly because actually I think particularly within academia, the memetic sort of analysis is very apt. For example, there's a very good book written by David Hull. I think I have it here. Very good book written by David Hull. I don't know if you can see because of the glare. Science as a Process, in which he uses a memetic framework. Although at the time memetics was sort of starting to go out of vogue. This was written at the time, memetics was sort of going out of vogue. But he nonetheless does rely on a rather memetic framework because he was one of the early founders of memetics alongside Dawkins, because he introduced the whole Dawkins distinction between replicators and interactors. And the paradigm example of a replicator is a meme, or a gene, and the paradigm interactor is the organism. And in the book, Science as a Process, Hull makes the case that academia is a sort of a memetic environment within which groups of collaborating or cooperating meme generators, essentially, namely groups of academics, compete with other groups, and these groups Hull refers to as demes. These demes compete with one another to spread their memes, and there are various attributes to a good academic meme that makes it spread. For example, something that is controversial and gets cited a lot will, of course, be more influential than something boring that nobody reads or cites. Something that is making use of other academics' works, especially within the same deme that you belong to, will be cited by other academics, sort of in a cooperative sort of way, and be boosted by virtue of that, by virtue of being cooperative, and so on. And so I think actually, yes, the strategies employed by Nick Land does seem to be a particularly good example of a memetic strategy for spreading academic work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If you could please write in the chat the names of the books you mentioned, that would be very helpful to those here and online as well, so they know what you referenced. Not right now necessarily, after you're done answering the question, if you could. Oh, already wrote it. Thank you. And the other question from the room, then I was going to ask you a question.
Hi. This was a fantastic presentation. I really enjoyed it. What I wanted to ask was whether your framework does account for those situations in which the evolution of a meme is not necessarily done through remixing or processing the meme family, but rather through the communities that form around it. I'm specifically thinking about communities like Bone Hurting Juice on Reddit.
And sorry, your question is that does the framework apply when it's primarily about the sort of behaviors or communities rather than the content being shared online? Is that right?
Yeah.
Right. Actually, I'm friends with the person who made the Bone Hurting Juice meme. He's also from the ironic meme page Subculture on Facebook. The meme page that he made it on was called Fun Silly Drawings for Fun Silly People, Haha. And And so I know quite a bit about the spread of the bone hurting juice meme and the communities that developed around it. I think that in a looser sense, to go back to the more traditional definitions of the meme as any kind of anything that is being imitated and spread through cultural means rather than biological means, it's very easy to include things like communities and performances or behaviors within communities as part of at least as a meme. So the communities themselves could also almost be called memes, and I think that especially utilizing JREG's interpretation of my model as something that primarily focuses on the phenomenology or the experience or the psychological intentionalities of the memers, rather than specifically on the content itself, it's very easy to apply the model. But even when we don't do that, even when we focus solely on the content, I think that a quirk of digital communication is everything ultimately is mediated through content. And so even when someone is talking to you on the screen real time, you're seeing pixels on the screen. That's a form of content, and that doesn't really stretch the notion of content very far. And I think that satirical content like JREG's, even when he's actually giving a live performance, it makes sense for us to apply a contextual sort of interpretive framework. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so what I got is that maybe in those situations, the content could be considered maybe the community that formed around the concept, the way that people react to the memes, the, you know, ritualistic comments that they leave. And, you know, you could just fit that into the framework as its own separate meme.
Yes, exactly. And Lemore Schiffman also suggested that memes should be rituals should be the paradigmatic examples of memes, as distinct from what she calls virals, which are things that spread without a lot of changes or remixes being introduced to the content.
Okay, all right, thank you. This has been great. I'm really looking forward to, you know, joining these communities and learning more about it. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you again. If anyone else has any questions from the room. Oh, there's one from Professor Mora. Should keep going through.
Hi, thanks so much for your talk. Really fantastic. I know next to nothing about these things, and I was just in the room and listening to what you're saying and very much enjoying it. So I noticed that there are a number of approaches from literary criticism and literary theory you talk about when you mention layers of irony and something of the sort. So I was just wondering, in a classical, if you like, logical vein, does this map onto those conditions under which an ironic utterance could be true or false? Or so is the kind of layering you mentioned, does that show up in a kind of formal treatment, or is it just this sort of on the go, piece by piece, we're going to have to analyze each meme, each production of the sort, and layers just stand for just how intricate the analysis is? Thanks.
I think that, of course, in colloquial usage, most of us don't engage in sort of formal logical analysis when we're interpreting each other's utterances. But I have certainly considered whether the layers do map onto to logic, as you say. And actually on the forum, there was another colleague of mine who posted his, I think, PhD thesis in which he actually tries to formulate a logic of ironic memes. And so that should be in the subforum called Share Your Work, I think. So you can have a go and look at that. But I think personally, if there's any form of logic that makes sense for us to try and apply to the layers of irony, it's not going to be a deductive logic. And I don't think it's even going to be an inductive logic in the sense of if only we could find out who originally made the meme or if only we could find out how often people interpret it ironically, we could find out the real meaning. I think the only form of logic that really makes sense for us to apply here is an abductive logic, in that we're seeing the content and we're sort of trying to reverse engineer the most plausible hypothesis for which sort of interpretation would make more sense for us to try out on the meme. And then, as a result of trying out the particular hypothesis, we end up with the most fruitful interpretations of the meme.
Great, thanks so much. And just as Anna was mentioning, could you possibly maybe add the title of the work you referred to in chat so I could follow up on that? Thanks so much. Cheers.
Well, thank you. Thank you a lot for your presentation. It was very comprehensive and very complex. So we really appreciate that. We were enjoying it all along the way. So thank you again. Thank you for having time to come here to talk to us. And hopefully you'll stick around for the rest of the conference to see how it goes. If not, it was nice having you. Now we are going to have a short 10-minute break, I think. Yeah, and now we are going to give you the round of applause again, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.